Okay. All right. Okay, well, we got about 1 minute.
Well, hello, welcome. My name is Laura Hickman. I'm the Associate Dean of the College of Urban and Public Affairs, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you all here today. And before we get started, I want to acknowledge that we are now on the traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Clackamas, bands of the Chinook, Tualatin, Malawa, and many other tribes who made their home along the Columbia River. By recognizing these communities, we honor their legacies, their lives, and their descendants. Next, I would like to acknowledge the family and friends of the graduates who are here with us today, as well as those who are here with us in spirit. While each graduate must complete this journey, they do not do it alone. Family and friends, you are to be congratulated for the critical role that you have played in encouraging, supporting, comforting, pushing, pulling, dragging, and all other ways that you have assisted our graduates here today to get to this point. And I'd also like to recognize the faculty for their dedication, guidance, mentorship, and for all the many ways in which they have also encouraged, supported, pushed, pulled, and yes, sometimes dragged each of you along to get to this spot today. Graduates, will you please join me in giving a round of applause to all of those who have supported you along the way? And now I'd like to say a brief word to our graduates. I would like to thank you in advance for making us look really good, and I know that you will, because the graduates of the distinguished programs of the College of Urban and Public Affairs, Portland State's flagship college, are amazing people, and they make a difference wherever they go. They are well known locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally for their dedication, creativity, innovation, and genuine commitment to making things better, both big and small. You are now graduates of the College of Urban and Public Affairs, and this will be your legacy too. And of this, I have no doubt. Family and friends, faculty and staff, please join me in recognizing the graduating class of 2024. And now it is my distinct honor to introduce to you Teresa Alonso Leon, a remarkable person in her own right. Teresa is a child of migrant farm workers and a first-generation college student who earned a master's degree in public administration right here within our own college. She's served in the Woodburn City Council and the Oregon House of Representatives. In these roles and many more, including a new advocacy organization called the Oregon Community Table on Post-Secondary Education and Training, Teresa has been a fierce advocate for higher education and for removing barriers that stand in the way of college access and success for so many individuals and communities. Teresa, thank you so much for being here today.
Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. Ooh, I like it. Everybody knows how to respond en español. I'm getting lots of cheers. I love this. He's like, yes. I love it. Again? Okay. You know, one thing that I really appreciated about coming to PSU is that we are very family friendly. I saw many of my classmates who were parents, and there were times when we were studying and they had their kids with them. And I thought that that was so lovely and so special that this is something that our institution really supported. And so I want to recognize all the parents who brought their children here today, because they get to experience and see what their relatives, what their big brother, big sister, their cousin has been able to achieve. So I just want to recognize PSU for that. Let's give them an applause. And I do not take it personal if a baby cries or says hello, hallelujah, because I'm the oldest of 5, and I've been surrounded by kids all my entire life. If my little boy was here, who's my child by heart, he's not biologically mine, he's my partner's, but if he was here, he'd be standing right next to me and going, hallelujah. So I love it. So I want to thank Joshua for inviting me to participate as this year's speaker. This is the first time that I've given a speech before these particular students. I've given a keynote speech at the full graduation, but this one's really important and special to me because I graduated with my master's in public administration. So this is really, really important and really special. I want to thank the PSU faculty and staff and employees who made this possible. And I want to acknowledge the class of 2024. I want to tell you how very, very proud I am of your achievement. I know that many of you sacrificed a lot. I see a lot of head shaking. I know many of you cried. I cried. I know many of you questioned, is this worth it? I know many of you said, maybe I can take a break and come back. But no, you all persevered. And you achieved something so special. If you want to look around you, there aren't very many of you, because this isn't something that you can easily do. That's why I'm so very proud of you. You have family members here to celebrate you. Let them love on you. You have brothers and sisters here whom you may be their hero, an example of what they could also achieve. Congratulations to you. Now I want to share a little bit about myself and my story. You all have your stories and what brought you here. I was born in a little town called San Jerónimo Purinchecuaro in the state of Michoacán and Mexico. Vicente and Guadalupe Alonso are my parents and my heroes. I'm the oldest of 5 children, and I came to this country as a 4-year-old child. We were migrant farm workers, so we picked the fields up and down between Clackamas and Jervis, or along the I-5 corridor. I experienced a lot of hardships. And as a young person, I saw a lot of injustice. My parents worked incredibly hard to provide the best that they could for us. They never got to master the English language because they worked from sunup to sundown to provide for us. And I thought, how can I contribute? But I was young. So I took on the role of being my mom's super assistant. Or my brothers and sisters would call me Mean Terry, Bossy Terry. But now that I think a bit about it, I was a leader in training. I remember going to my elementary school years where my teachers saw something in me that I did not know quite yet. They told me, Teresa, you need to go to college. And I thought they were telling all the kids the same thing. And as I excelled in school, teachers kept reminding me that I was college material. And when I was able to, I worked alongside my parents picking berries. I knew that it was a challenge for them to help us all economically because there were 5 of us kids. So I worked every summer to help pay for my school supplies and my school clothes. Oh man, I loved school. And the times my parents let me go to summer school, I enjoyed it even more. I internalized this information that I needed to go to college. And when I would communicate this to my parents, and when the school would communicate this to my parents would just shake their heads. Yes, she's smart. But then we would go home and my parents would say, Teresa, we just don't have that kind of money to send you. So get it out of your head. You're not gonna go to college. But I wasn't one of those people that gave up. So I told my teachers in high school that I wanted to graduate early. And they said, okay. And they set me up with a bunch of packets, and I took on all the courses that I could. But then you know what happened? I got burned out because I didn't have my extracurriculars anymore. I was an athlete, I loved science, I was in physics class, and I couldn't do those things because I was committed to graduating early. And then I got depressed because I was sad that I didn't achieve the thing that I wanted to. And then my mom suggested, well, maybe we could transfer you to another high school and start over, and maybe you'll get your energy again. And I said, okay, so we transferred. And at that school, a counselor came up to me and said, Teresa, are you okay? But I had high school attitude. And I said, I'm good. And then he would come back again and again and again until I finally said, okay, I'll talk to you. And I told him my story about being a farm worker. And I told him my story about being the oldest in my family. And I told him my story about how my family couldn't afford to send me to college because that's really, really what I wanted to do. And he said, well, do you want to go to college now? I said, yeah, now. Like, I can't wait. He said, okay, let's find out what opportunities are out there for you. I was floored. Nobody had ever said, let's figure this out. So he went and investigated, came back, and told me, guess what? There's a couple programs you might qualify for. Really? Tell me. He said, at U of O, there's a program called High School Equivalency Program, and it's for migrant students. And basically, you get your GED. And I was like, what's a GED? And he said, well, it's an equivalent to high school. I go, well, do I get to wear a cap and gown and walk across the stage and receive my diploma? He said, well, yes and no. You'll walk across the stage and receive a GED certificate. I said, well, will that let me get into college? He said, yes. Where do I sign up? And so he helped me fill out the application. And I waited for a response. I finally got the letter. To the parents of Teresa Alonso Leon. I opened it. And it said, congratulations, your daughter's been accepted to the high school fluency program in Eugene at U of O, full ride scholarship, can start this fall. Whoa. Can you imagine? I'm stoked, I'm excited, but hold on. Remember, my parents were like, we can't afford to send you anywhere. And so I had to process, who do I share this news with first? My mom or my dad? So I go to my mom first, because I know that she and I can work together to share this news with my dad. So I go to my mom. Mommy, I got accepted. And her face turned really sad. And for a second, I thought my mom was sad because she was gonna send me off to college. But no, Catholic guilt hit. Mija, daughter, who's gonna help me with the kids? Who's gonna help me with the bills? Who's gonna help me translate? Because you do all those things for us. I got a little nasty and said, your other kids, you have like 4 of them, they can help you. Well, will you help me train them? I'll do what I can. And then my mom says, okay, give me a minute, I need to process this news. And then for the last 2 months, she was crying every time she looked at me. Oh my gosh. And I said, Mommy, are you ready? We need to talk to Dad because we need to let him know that I got this amazing opportunity. And she says, I know. Let me talk to him first. And then when I tell you to go, you go. Okay. So one day, so my dad is one of those dads that thinks he's a mechanic, but he's not. And he bought me this 1975 Chevy Nova for my quince, like a sweet 16, but in our culture it's a quinceañera. And he was so proud of the fact that he bought me this car. Well, it broke down all the time, but he fixed it all the time. And he says, oh, he was fiddling with it outside. And my mom says, your dad is in a good mood. Go talk to him. Okay. And I walk out there. I go, Dad. He's underneath he's fiddling in the engine. So you can see, I can't see his head. He can't see me either. But we're talking to each other. And he goes, see, mija? Yes, daughter? And I said, well, I wanted to share with you that I got this amazing opportunity. I'm gonna get my GED and then go to college. In Spanish, it sounds more rude, but he's like, what the hell's a GED? And I said, well, it's alternative to high school, but I get to start college as soon as I'm done. And he goes, well, who's gonna take care of you? That was my dad's concern. Being the oldest and the first to leave the house or want to leave the house in our Latino culture, your dad is very, very concerned about the world out there and what's gonna happen to their daughter. And then many other cultures. And so I said, well, I can take care of myself. I take care of you and mommy, and I take care of my brothers and sisters. And he says, Okay, let me think about it. Next thing you know, we're driving, not the 1975 Chevy Nova, but we're driving one of his trucks to U of O, where he got to see my dorm. I lived in the Bean dorm. I don't know if anybody knows U of O or not. Okay. And he got to meet some of my instructors, and then they drove away. This was historical in our family. This was not something that I was supposed to participate in. But my parents knew enough that letting me go get my education meant something different was going to happen to our family that was going to break poverty. And so off I went, earned my GED, started Lane Community College right after, transferred to Western Oregon University, and got my degree and became the first person in my family to earn a college degree. Thank you. I had made a promise to myself that I needed to earn a master's degree, that this was so important to me. I don't know what or who put that in my head, but I was really determined, just like all of you were determined, that this is something you must achieve. And I started my professional career working in the nonprofit sector. I was passionate about education, so I stayed in the education realm. I started working for Portland Community College as a program director and ran a national scholarship program. I started some amazing projects there and made sure that our parents were engaged. I also established a mentoring program in partnership with Nike, so my students could have an experience in the career fields that they were interested in. One of our college presidents called my program a flagship program. However, funding ran out, and I took that as a sign that I needed to go back to grad school. And so I came back to PSU, dedicated all my time, got some loans, and was a full-time student. I had an amazing experience here. Ups and downs, of course, like everybody else, but I loved my classmates. I enjoyed learning with them. I had some amazing professors, some who are retired and some who are still here, I believe. I graduated in 2013, but in 2011, I decided to become a citizen. I submitted my application, and in 2012, I got a letter saying that I needed to go for an interview. So here in Portland, in one of the immigration offices, I went to my 8 o'clock appointment, answered the necessary questions, and was told, okay, you pass. Now, can you come back in a couple hours for your ceremony? So I couldn't even invite anybody to come see my ceremony. But that was okay, because I was gonna become a citizen. So I took myself out to breakfast. I called some of my professors from my master's program and told them I achieved this goal in my life. And they were so proud of me. It feels so good when our professors tell us how proud they are of us. And they were sorry that they couldn't attend because they were offering classes. And so I took myself to the ceremony and I swore as a citizen, and I became a citizen of the United States. That was an amazing accomplishment. I did it all by myself. Heck, I had a graduate degree. I didn't need a lawyer because I had a degree. So, fast forward, I decided to move back to my hometown, Woodburn. And while I was in Woodburn, I started getting some calls. Teresa, we would like you to consider running for the city council appointment. Okay. Then I started getting more calls. And then I looked at the city council leadership body. And I learned that it had been 10 years since they had a person of color represent on the city council. And the population of Woodburn, for those of you who don't know, is majority Latino. The school district population is 82% Latino. And so it was so important at that point that we needed to have representation, according to me. So I applied, and all the men, there were all men who had submitted their applications as well. And then I spoke Spanish when I went to the final interview and the final, we had to give a speech to community, and I did it bilingually. And I know the men who were running against me were scared. And then I got a call from the mayor, Mayor Kathy Figley, who says she started my political career. She said, Teresa, you have so much experience in leadership. You are our best candidate, and so I'm appointing you. And so I became the third person of color to the Woodburn City Council in 2013. And 3 years later, folks came to me again and said, Teresa, we want you to run for state office. Now think about this. If you were in my shoes, I'm an immigrant. I just became a citizen not too long ago. That wasn't even a dream or a thing that I thought that I could even achieve. And when I looked at the legislative body also, I saw that it was definitely not as diverse as I thought. Therefore, we needed to have representation. And I said, okay, let's do this. So I ran my first campaign in 2016. And as a new candidate, nobody knew me from the wall. But then eventually they knew me. And our campaign became one of the top campaigns in the state. So much that President Obama learned about my campaign and he endorsed me. Thank you. I couldn't believe it. I remember he left a voice message and he was trying to pronounce my last names, and he left a message with 4 versions just so that he could get it right if I needed to use his voice and any kind of information and marketing, whatever. I thought that was special. So what I want to say here in closing is that the degrees you have worked so hard for will open a lot of doors. Think about what you want to do with your degree. Some of you may already have jobs. Some of you may not have jobs yet, but I have one important recommendation. Do informational interviews. Informational interviews is a little old school, but you know what? The one time I did an informational interview with the state, I went in, I scheduled my appointment on a Tuesday, went for the informational interview on a Thursday, and started working on Monday. So give that a try if you're looking for a job in the area that you're interested. Do a bunch of them. And if you already have a job, this degree is going to get you farther in your career. This is so exciting. And I hope that I have a chance to work with you in some capacity, because this degree is all about problem solving. You are now experts in problem solving. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak before the families and the students today. It has been such an honor. I hope that my words, my story, allows you to believe that there's anything that you can do if you put your mind to it. Thank you so much.
Wow. Right? Wow. Yeah. If any of you wonder why we like to teach, it's because we get students like that in our classroom, and like this, and like this. It's amazing. It's amazing. It really is a privilege. I'm Kevin Keskis. I'm a professor and chair of the Department of Public Administration here in the Hatfield School of Government at Portland State. And I just am reflecting on some of Teresa's words, challenge, persistence, opportunity, strategy, and finally celebration, right? Yeah, that's there for all of us, So for an event like this, we all know that doesn't happen like that. There are wizards and angels who've been working on this for weeks, and in fact, in some cases, months. And while we're all seated, guess who the wizards and angels are? They're still standing in the back. And without them, we wouldn't have any of this. And so I'd like to just recognize a few folks: Kaya, Aaron, Elena, Delaney, and Megan. And so let's give them a hand. And I see Dr. Schrock looking at me, and I'm thinking, oh, I might have forgotten somebody. For all you people that I forgot as well, so thank you very much, really. Okay. It's now my pleasure to introduce our first student speaker today, Dr. Jennifer Joyelle. Dr. Joyelle has a BA in Arts and Letters. She got her master's here at Portland State in Curriculum and Instruction, and most recently, her PhD here in our Public Affairs and Policy program in the Hatfield School of Government. The goal of her dissertation was to advance theories and practices of leadership that lead to what? More sustainable and resilient institutions. She knows something about institutions because for nearly 20 years, my friend Jennifer Joyelle was not only a public school teacher, but she was a middle school teacher. Right there. So when she comes up here in a minute, you just think, she's your middle school teacher. And I, as a father of children who went through the Portland public school system, as far as I'm concerned, every public school teacher gets a gold star, every one of them. So thank you for that. She's taught in our public administration department, in our civic leadership minor for years. In fact, she was one of the very first professors as a graduate student teaching our undergrads. And some of those undergrads are here today, now graduating with their masters. And more recently has been teaching in our executive Masters in Public Administration program. Jennifer cares deeply about our children, our democracy, and our planet. She's an exceptional educator and a great scholar. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Jennifer Joyelle.
Thank you, Dr. Keskis. Congratulations to my colleagues, and thank you to our esteemed faculty, and welcome to our families and friends here today. In this moment, we have come together to celebrate, to be joyful, to be serious, to commemorate this particular moment in time. So take this in. We could celebrate any moment, but we typically reserve celebrations for milestones. I can choose any moment to celebrate, really, to take stock of where I am, where I've been, and where I think or hope I am going. Truthfully, it isn't often I stop to take it in, to savor the actual moment where the infinite string of prior causes cease and the limitless potential of future experience begins. So I'm asking for you to pause for a moment to do just that. And I ask that each of you, or I am going to pause for a moment to do that, just that. I ask each of you to do the same, to share gratitude or amazement or relief or fear or maybe overwhelming joy, and to consider first how wildly improbable the path that led us all to this place, where we are each acknowledging the same brief moment together. These days, it often seems groups of people come together just to oppose something, that we band together to try to force reality to conform to some shared expectation. So in this moment we are sharing right now, consider how precious it is that we have come together in a shared belief that our community, our region, our institutions, and yes, our world can be a better place. For this to have all happened, Portland State University must have gone through its tumultuous history to get to the point where those whose tenure is long past could bestow on the fledgling institution the charter to let knowledge serve the city. And under that directive, the College of Urban and Public Affairs was born. How improbable that each of the steps leading up to the formation of this college under this vision led to a starting point for each of us in a new, just as improbable a path. And yet, here we are, shaped in many ways by the vision of people we will never meet, shaped through a common pursuit of common cause itself. We are better together. Whether that is our participation in building social fabric together in civic life, collaborating across sectors together to work on some of the most seemingly intractable challenges, or simply appreciating a university experience that shelters us while we learn from each other about our world and what it means to be together. We become better together when we discover that we are better together. When we learn to listen, to pause, to consider, and to appreciate the contributions of others, and just as importantly, of ourselves. Those of us in regalia know that we did not do this alone. That those who supported us, who encouraged us, who held us together, believed in the value of our contributions, and to honor that, we can continue to do the good work, to continue to engage, participate, and contribute. At the College of Public and Urban Affairs, and for me in the Hatfield School, I discovered that this improbable path I found myself walking was also being walked by a collection of remarkable individuals who share the belief that we are better together, who share a belief that our public agencies, nonprofits, and institutions are worth understanding, worth improving, and worth caring about. We care, or we wouldn't be here. So here we are, in this moment. Those late nights spent wondering if that stroke of genius would occur, if luck was on our side, those can be set aside. The probability of us being here right now is 1. It is certain. So we leave here today in certainty. We are here now. We will leave here with possibility rather than probability in front of us. Let us take into that infinite potential this knowledge and let it serve the city and all the places we may find ourselves. We are truly better together. Congratulations to the graduating class of 2024.
Good morning. I'm Greg Schrock. I'm an associate professor, and I'm the director of the NOHAD A. Toulan School of Urban Studies and Planning in the College of Urban and Public Affairs. And it's my pleasure to introduce our second student speaker. I don't have quite as elaborate of an introduction as my colleague Kevin, but I do want to introduce Max Del Hierro, who's a second-year graduating student from the Master of Urban and Regional Planning program. And I think when you hear him speak, you'll understand why he has become a leader and an inspiration for a lot of his colleagues. So with that, welcome.
I think the other speakers were a little shorter than I am. So, fun fact about me, I didn't tell any of my family that I was speaking today. Surprise. My wife might be crying. 15 years married, surprises. I never thought I would be one to get a graduate degree. I struggled immensely with my undergrad. It took me 2 tries. My second time around, I had to work full-time while trying to do it online, at home, at night. And I still struggled. It was until October of 2013 that things finally made sense to me. I could breathe, and I got my legs underneath me. October of 2013 was when my son was born, and things made sense. And I was finally able to do it. I finished that last semester with a newborn at home, working full-time on the dean's list. First time I've ever done that while attending school at all. I flitted around for a little while after getting my undergrad, and it wasn't until I landed at the city of San Jose in the planning department that I finally figured out what it was that I wanted to do. I had no idea what planning was beforehand. About a month in, I said, oh, I get this. About 3 months in, I said, oh, what do I have to do to make this my life? And that's how I ended up here. Moves and pandemics and all sorts of stuff coming out of California, but I made it here. And I'm immensely happy that I am here and that I'm able to give this speech. As any good planner should do, I was engaged in reflective practice with my wife. And we were talking about the various things that led us to the point where we are and about what things could have changed, what could have been different. And I asked my wife a question. I said, hey, if I would have asked you 5 years ago, what do you think the odds were that I would be a master's student or that I would have cancer? And she said, oh, definitely the cancer. There's no way you're getting a graduate degree. Well, I did both. In September of 2023, just before the term started, I had my thyroid removed, and I found out I had stage 3 medullary thyroid cancer and papillary cancer. The term started just 3 weeks after my surgery, and in that first week, I walked into Megan's office, Megan Horst, she's around here somewhere, and Greg was there, and I sat them down and said, great, guys, I have news. Megan cursed. Greg kind of frowned and nodded his head and said, whatever we can do. And I said, well, what I want to do is be here. I want to be with this cohort. I don't know what my future looks like. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to graduate with this group. I'm going to do workshop with this group, and I'm going to make this happen. That quarter, I worked full-time, still had my kids, and I took 14 units. Yeah. It was a rough semester, a rough quarter. Shortly after finals, I did a round of radiation therapy, and I did Christmas at home with my family, and I went right back to school again, and I finished school. I am now healthy, waiting for continued good news. Cancer is a marathon and not a sprint. I think this MERT is a much more of a sprint. So I'm there. I think before I finish today, I want to convey an emotion to everybody here, and that emotion is gratitude. And that's gratitude to the professors of the urban planning department that created a program that was facilitative of us being professional planners. We practiced, we were in the field, we were working with people, and I felt so prepared to start my career, and I'm at Clackamas County as a planner, and I felt incredibly prepared for that position, so I'm utterly grateful. To the rest of my MERP cohort, that I am so grateful that you allowed me to learn with you and from you in so many circumstances, and I am so proud of you. Gratitude to my mother-in-law, Selena, my father-in-law, Tomas, and my sister-in-law, Alexa, who without their help, without taking care of my kids, there's no way I would have been able to do this. I had nights that I wasn't home until 10 o'clock, and the only way that I knew that I could do that is that I knew that my kids were loved, safe, and taken care of. Thank you. For my wife, absolute gratitude for being the rock of my life, my best friend, and the best wife I could have. Thank you. And finally, to my boys, who are the guiding light. They are the reason why I do what I do, the reason why I have my legs underneath me, and the reason why I plan. I want to make a better world for them. Congratulations, class of 2024. We did it, you nerds.
Wow. Those are 3 tough acts to follow. You know, one of the privileges of events like this is just to be in a room with so much inspiration and promise. Let's just take a minute to soak all that in, because it's not often that we have this opportunity. To echo one of my colleagues previously, you know, students like those who have just spoken and like all of you out there right now, it is such a privilege to have the opportunity to work with you. And I think it's why so many of us here on the faculty are here today. And it's why we come to work every morning. So thank you and congratulations on your accomplishments. So my name is Josh Easton. I'm a faculty member and chair of the Department of Politics and Global Affairs in the College of Urban and Public Affairs. And I have the distinct honor of kicking off our festivities today by reading those names of the people who will be hooded with their doctoral degrees. First, I want to take a moment to explain a bit about our regalia and the process of hooding. The master's gown has long pointed sleeves, while the doctoral gown is faced with velvet and has bell-shaped sleeves. Candidates for advanced degrees wear an academic hood. The colors on the hood signify 2 things: the university where we got our PhD and the academic field of the degree. You'll see the faculty advisor place the hood over the doctoral graduate's head. And this is the symbolic moment of completing the doctoral program. Thus the expression hooding. So let's get started. We will now recognize our doctoral degree recipients in urban studies and planning. So our first student is Mariam Amiri, and her dissertation chair is Megan Horst. The title of Dr. Amiri's dissertation is Embodied Urban Political Ecology of Oil, Social Reproduction in Oil Geographies, Case Study in Awaz, Khuzestan, Iran. Oh, that way. Sorry, folks. I promise we're pros. Our next student is Minji Cho. Her dissertation chair is Matthew Gebhardt, and her dissertation title is 3 Essays on Communicative Planning from the Perspective of East Asians. Next, we have Amanda Hudson. Her dissertation chair is Dawn Richardson. The title of Amanda's dissertation is Participatory Democracy, the Potential for Civic Transformation, Understanding Participants' Learning in the Milwaukee Citizens Jury. Next, we have Kyu Ri Kim. Her dissertation chair is Jennifer Dill. The title of her dissertation is The Central Role of Safety Perceptions in Connecting Crash Risk Factors and Walking Behavior. Next, we have Huijun Tan, with her dissertation chair, Lisa Bates. The title of her dissertation is The Effects of Physical Accessibility and Subjective Accessibility on Grocery Shopping Behaviors in Oakland, California. Congratulations to all of you. We will now recognize our doctoral degree recipients in public affairs and policy. First up, we have Christopher M. Frost, with his dissertation chair, Dr. Doug Morgan. The title of his dissertation is The Bonneville Power Administration in a Transformative Decade, a study of collaboration in public administration. Next up, we have Jennifer Joyal, with dissertation chair Craig Shin. The title of her dissertation is American Institution of Public K-12 Education, an institutional field under a complexity paradigm. Next, we have Osman G. Tanrikulu with his dissertation chair, David Kinsella. The title of his dissertation is The Impetus of International Security and European Integration, the Nature of EU Common Security and Defense Policy. And next, we have Titisak Dwadsuntia with his dissertation chair, Masami Nishishiba. The title of his dissertation is Examining Policy Innovation Process and the Roles of Policy Entrepreneurs, a case of Smart City Initiative in Khon Kaen, Thailand. Let's give one more round of applause for our doctoral degree awards. Next, we recognize our Executive Master of Public Administration graduates, whose names will be read by Dr. Jennifer Allen.
Taller than I am. This is a really fun job. I was so excited I got asked to do this. Max Sealer. Congratulations, Max. And Ikoya Phillips. Next, we'll be recognizing our Master of Public Administration graduates. Come on up. Jamie Zamrin. Si Kyung Krum Kim. Asia Bedwell. Hao Tang. Traffic jam. Alyssa Tuss. Alexander Butler. Serena Dressel. Sarah Hale Medor. And Max Saf Geller. That's okay. Oh my gosh. It's all right, we're tall. And next, we'll be recognizing our Master of Public Administration, Health Administration graduates. Hannah Drill. Next, we recognize our Master of Public Policy graduates. Spencer McMaster. Katie Guevara. Sorry, Katie Gavaris. I was not there. Brett Morgan. Congratulations. Amy Rathfelder. Tiffany Cummings. Elizabeth Bratz. Morgan Fenn. Isaiah Henry. Congratulations. And next we will be recognizing, I'm going to wait till they're done here. Next, we will be recognizing our Master of Science and Political Science graduates, whose names will be read by Dr. David Kinsella.
Christopher Hill. Margaret Maxey. Laikeka Rivera. Next, we will recognize our Master of Urban Studies graduates, whose names will be read by Matthew Gephardt.
Bongi Chidiso Aikane. Udit Kandawal. Nicholas Hash. Lastly, we will recognize our Master of Urban and Regional Planning graduate. Gail Chastain. Sierra Willems. Carson Fainer. Sierra Williams. Mackenzie Amott. Dawn Walter. Simeon Walker. Caitlin Dendas. Max Del Hiro. Meredith Herbst. Tyler Smith. Maya Wiseman. Samantha Gallagher. Daisy Schonder. Holly Quirin. And just a quick note, Holly, congratulations as this year's Outstanding APA Student Award winner. Aaron Young. Afrosa Hossein Misty. Cara Hamilton. Miguel Jalen Ferreira. Summer Cook. Wyatt Schaffner. Itasha Terrell. Anshel Aranchakandi Travari. Aswatha Rangutha Swami. Shane Seaman. Eiji Toda. Jovan Merceron.
All right, before we wrap up, I just want to again thank the staff who worked so tirelessly to help put this together. Kai Mendoza, Aaron Wenstrom, Megan Helgeson, Delaney Bird, Elena Sokol, and Mariah Terrell. And I also want to thank my colleagues Josh and Kevin for really agreeing to put on this party together. And I want to thank the Coupa Dean's office and especially Interim Dean Sean Smallman, who couldn't be here, for really supporting us in doing this event today. So thank you to all of you for that. Graduates, now for the fun part. Will you please stand if you are able so that we can officially congratulate you on your achievements? All right, I would like to now invite you to join us for a reception over in this direction here. Thank you and congratulations again. Thank you all for coming.